Okay, everybody. Long time no talk. I have been wanting to do this for a little while now. I got into a dust-up, might have been about a month and a half ago, with some very arrogant Sabbath keepers. And they really didn't have anything to argue, really. But I wanted to do this video just in case any Christians were wondering. You run into, a Seventh-day Adventist, they tell you that you have the mark of the beast because you are not keeping the Sabbath, breaking the fourth commandment, and, that you're basically following Catholic tradition because it was the Catholics who changed the Sabbath. Well, I want to give you a way to answer them. And I'll be honest, I don't always see many good answers out there in Christian circles. And the guys who really get this right are the guys at Bible.ca. I disagree with these guys about as much as I agree with them. They're wrong on a lot of stuff. But heck if they don't crack this one out of the park. And there are some texts that demonstrate, why don't Christians keep the Sabbath? Why do we worship on Sunday? Are we worshiping on a new Sabbath by worshiping on Sunday? Well, let's take a look. Paul talks about in Colossians 2:14, having canceled out the certificate of debt, consisting of decrees against us, which was hostile to us. And he's taken it out of the way, having nailed it to the cross. The certificate of debt, consisting of decrees, which was hostile to us. That was nailed to the cross. Now, that's just the ceremonial Mosaic law is the question. Well, let's see how he describes the Ten Commandments in 2 Corinthians 3:7. The ministry of death in letters engraved on stones. So what does he call the Ten Commandments in 2 Corinthians? The ministry of death in letters engraved on stones. And he calls something a certificate of death which was hostile to us. That's pretty much 6 of one, half dozen of the other there. So that's a pretty strong case that Paul's talking about the Ten Commandments having been nailed to the cross. We are no longer under the Ten Commandments. He talks about in Ephesians 2:15. They don't really have a good example there. Galatians 3:24, 3:25. The law became our tutor to lead us to Christ, that we may be justified by faith. Now that the faith has come, we no longer need a tutor. Is he talking about the Ten Commandments there, or just the Mosaic law? Well, here's the one that knocks it out. Romans 7:1-7. I have never run into a Sabbath keeper who's been able to respond to Romans 7:1-7. So let me bring it up. Romans 7. Released from the law, bound to Christ. Let's take a gander at this. Okay. What happened to it? Hello? Let's try this again. And back. Alright, so let's just read it. Do you not know, brothers and sisters, for I am speaking to those who know the law, that the law has authority over someone as long as that person lives. For example, by law, a married woman is bound to her husband as long as he is alive, but if the husband dies, she is released from the law that binds him. So Paul's making an analogy that we're not under a law. So then, if she has sexual relations with another man while her husband is still alive, she's an adulteress. But if her husband dies, she is released from the law and is not an adulteress if she marries another man. So you, my brothers and sisters, You also died to the law through the body of Christ, that you might belong to another, to him who was raised from the dead, in order that we might bear fruit for God. So we no longer belong to the law. At this point, the Sabbath keeper is saying, yeah, the ceremonial law, the kosher laws. Okay? When we were in the realm of death, the sinful passions aroused by the law were at work in us, so that we bore fruit for death. But now, by dying to what once bound us, we've been released from the law. So we are released from the law so we can serve in the new way. So we are not under the law. Which law? Let's crack it. Let's hit it all home. What shall we say? Is the law sinful? Certainly not. Nevertheless, I would not have known what sin was had it not been for the law. For I would not have known what coveting really was if the law had not said, thou shalt not covet. Which law is that contained in? You shall not covet. That's the 9th commandment. That's part of the 10 commandments. That is the law that Christians are not under. Does this mean that we're free to steal, free to commit adultery, free to worship other gods? Of course not. We are now in the new covenant of Jesus Christ. And all throughout the New Testament, it talks about Christians and their covenant obligations of morality. Of course we don't commit adultery. That's one of our covenant obligations. Of course we don't steal. Of course we don't worship other gods. But we don't do this because we're still under the Decalogue, because we're still under the 10 Commandments. 10 Commandments have been done away with. We are under the same morality of the 10 Commandments, being Christians under Christ's new covenant. If you disagree with me, refute the video. So I wanted to do that one part, and I want to take a look at the history of not keeping the Sabbath in the church pretty soon. And yeah, see you next time.